Hello, my name is Katja Brosum. I am currently a graduate student at Liberty University online. This is my interpersonal communication project for the course HSCO 508. Next slide. This presentation will cover the basic meaning of communication, explain my overarching goal, as well as how my background and behavioral blend influences my interpersonal communication skills. In addition, potential barriers for communication and solutions to noise pollution will be discussed. In conclusion, my action plan will show how I plan to improve my communication skills. Next slide. What is communication? The purpose of communication is to instruct, inform, or entertain others in a clear, correct, and constructive way. Communication not only uses the spoken word or what we hear, but also body language, facial expressions, or the written word. Next slide. Stewart uses the metaphors inhaling and exhaling when it comes to communication. Inhaling is what we hear or perceive, and exhaling expressing or disclosing information to others. Next slide. My overarching goal. My goal is to become a level 1 listener at all times, meaning I want to become a more empathetic listener. Being able to listen without casting judgment, listening without being distracted, and not only include my body language but also be aware of the body language of others. I want to listen from the heart. Next slide. Interpersonal communication skill test. I scored a 78 on the interpersonal communication test, showing me that I am already a fairly good listener, that I have no trouble to put myself into the shoes of others, but that sometimes I communicate not clearly enough and misunderstandings occur. Not scoring 100 means there is room for improvement, to become an even better listener, to become more empathetic. Next slide. Importance of interpersonal communication. Hartley explains that interpersonal communication is not only the exchange of messages, but also meaning. Interpersonal communication is intentional, ongoing, and cumulative over time. Next slide. What is expected of me? How others see me? IS personality. I am inspiring and submissive, more people-oriented and less task-oriented. I enjoy talking to others, but I am not focused on details. I'm a perfect people person, crowd pleaser, loyal friend. Next slide. IS strengths and weaknesses. Strengths, people skills, speaking and influencing large groups, faithful servant in small groups. Weaknesses, spending too much time on relating to others. I am too concerned about my popularity and I overlook details. Next slide. Who I really am. DIS personality. I am dominant, inspiring, and submissive, not cautious or calculating, positive and outgoing, a little shy and sensitive. I am more active than passive, yet not detail-oriented. Next slide. DIS strengths and weakness. Strengths are: I'm motivated to impress and please people. I prefer to take charge. I am not afraid to take on responsibilities. My weaknesses: a lack of correctness. I cut corners. I am not always prepared, and I often overuse my people skills. Next slide. My background. Burley Allen explains communication skills develop as early as birth. I am the oldest of 4. Therefore, there was always a lot of talking going on growing up, as well as always people around me. I do feel that this laid a foundation to my listening skills, as well as my desire to please the people around me. I also feel being the oldest made me somewhat of a leader, which is one of my strengths. Next slide. Potential barriers I face: challenging conversations, sharing my own story, anger, being unfocused or distracted with both internal and external. Next slide. Internal noise pollution. Problems are hearing what I want to hear, biased listening, or emotional listening. Solutions: actual listening, not being influenced by past experiences, being positive and patient with others and myself. Next slide. External noise pollution. Problems: outdoor noises, multitasking, talk or speaking too low or too fast. Solutions: finding a quiet place, focusing on one thing at a time, ask the speaker to either slow down or speak up. There is no harm in asking for clarification. Next slide. My action plan. I want to reflect on what I have learned in this class and put it into action. I need to start blaming others for I need to start not only blaming others for communication errors, but also find blame in myself. I need to allow others to talk without interruptions, allowing myself to take a break when I feel overwhelmed. It is not my job to solve everybody's problem. Need to relate to others more. Next slide. Asking follow-up questions to prevent error. Recognize my importance. It is not always about others. Actually hearing and listening to what was said, not what I thought I heard, and accept the opinions of others. I am not always right. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.